realtors are going to be 100% totally blindsided. This hasn't been done in 20 plus years. It's really turning the appraisal community upside down. A brand new form that appraisals are going to be done. The appraisers have to put so much more detail, room by room, condition, deferred maintenance, you name it, it's going to be on there. You could have an underwriter look and say, you know what? I want this to be fixed. This is a safety hazard. The appraisers have to put so much more data in, they will be charging more money for appraisals. So closing costs are going to go up. To the Real Estate Show with Pat Lopez, where we talk everything real estate. For this show, we're going to be talking about appraisals. Now, most real estate agents and, of course, the general public have no idea of what's going to happen in the next couple of months. There is a new appraisal format coming out. It's called 3.6, and it's really turning the appraisal community upside down. A brand new form with the appraisals that are going to be done. And we're talking, this hasn't been done in 20 plus years. So there's going to be big learning curves. We're going to have a learning curve with appraisers filling out new forms. We're going to have a learning curve for lenders reading the appraisals, and then for the agents and buyers that there may be some repairs being called for where normally repairs wouldn't be called for. So let's jump in and get to it. Okay, so in November 2nd, the official launch of 3.6 is going to happen. Now, there's some appraisers and mortgage companies that are already using the new version. But what is the difference? Why do we have this new version? What is it all about? Okay, so there's going to be a lot more detail on this new version. Formerly, you would have appraisers put things where they wanted. So if there was a repair on an appraisal, it could be on any given, 5 or 6 different pages. You would have to search for where it's at. Well, with the new version, any kind of repairs, any kind of deferred maintenance, anything is going to be in one spot. And the appraisers have to put so much more detail. And we're talking about room by room, condition, deferred maintenance, you name it, it's going to be on there. And with that new detail, you could have an underwriter look and say, you know what? I want this to be fixed. This is a safety hazard. Even though the appraiser didn't call for the repair, just cited the deferred maintenance. And a perfect example would be, let's say there's a stain in the roof, in the ceiling. And the appraiser calls that. Well, the appraiser may not ask for a roof cert, but an underwriter could look and say, hey, let's make sure that there's not a current active leak. Let's get a roof certification done. Now, a lot of people are going to be saying, especially if you're an agent, you're saying, hey, why is the appraiser calling for this or the underwriter calling for this? Well, this is the new version that with so much more detail on these appraisals and photos that this could happen, okay? And this is for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, conventional financing. FHA are going to follow suit, but that's going to be a little bit later on, probably next year in 2027. They'll come on board with the new version. Are you thinking about buying, refinancing, or investing in real estate? I've been a loan officer for 30 years, helping my clients find the right loan for the right property. I keep it simple and honest. If you want real numbers and guidance you can trust, give me a call. Now let's get back to the show. So we're going to have a lot of realtors turning around and probably complaining, saying, hey, this is a conventional deal. Why are they asking for repairs? Well, that's one of the reasons, is because the appraisers have to call for it. Also, if there is improvements done to a property, well, the appraiser is supposed to be asking, was there permits? When was this done? just a lot more detail is going into these appraisals. Well, we all know if it's something small, somebody may not pull a permit. That could be problematic. Now there's no permits. It's going to be really interesting, and we're looking at guidance that, hey, can we still close a loan if an appraiser says, hey, this basement was redone, but there was no permits pulled, so we really need to get that understanding on how that's going to transpire. Huge. As far as permits are concerned, major issue when it comes to that. Now, delays. Well, normally you could have an appraiser go out, do the appraisal, send it back, boom. You get it back in a week, maybe 10 days at the most, right? Well, this is a brand new version. So this brand new version, like anything, it may take the appraiser 2 weeks. And then with all the extra data that needs to go in, it could take 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So we're going to have to allow more time. The positive is we're going into a slower season, and a slower season is the winter, and typically in the fall and the winter, the real estate market slows down. Now, the other ramification you can have is you have a lot of older appraisers. They may just get out of the business. They may say, you know what, I don't want to get the new software. I don't want to take the time to learn. I've been, the new appraisals, the new formats, I wanted to retire, anyway. Well, this is now, the thing that, pushed me right out the door. I'm out. So the least amount of appraisers that we have, the longer, potential delays. Now, I think the first 6 months, I see delays, but like anything, as people get used to the new format, then it's going to be, second nature. You'll even forget, what the old format looked like, and, it'll be relatively quick. But I will tell you, the appraisers have to put so much more data in, they will be charging more money for appraisals. So closing costs are going to go up. The costs of appraisers are going to go up because of the cost. So that's almost guaranteed of that happening. Now, why is all this happening? Well, it's AI. So anytime somebody gets a loan and they order appraisal, you have to upload the appraisal to Fannie Mae, to Freddie Mac. And they have a library, a book of all the appraisals. That's how people get appraisal waivers, where you don't have to have an appraisal done because there has been enough appraisals done, or, enough homes sell where there's appraisals on data, and the system turns around and says, hey, there's enough information, you're putting 20, 30, 40% down, no appraisal is needed, okay? So we have that currently. I think with the new format and the standardized format that everybody will be using, everything in the exact same place, appraisal waivers or just drive-by appraisals, things like that. So if that does happen in the future, it could be good for the business industry as far as speed's concerned. Now, how good it's going to be if you don't get an appraisal done, and how do we know what values really are without having somebody go out there and walk the property and that kind of thing? That's a whole different story. But as far as speed and maybe eventually cost, if you get more waivers or more, just drive-bys where you don't have to go in, that could potentially reduce the cost and reduce the timing. So the big takeaway here is going to be this. It's going to take more time for these appraisals, especially in the beginning. It's going to cost more money. Appraisals are going to be asking stuff that they've never asked, for before. It could be, hey, if you have, renovations done to a home without permit, that could be problematic, 100%. Okay, so. And just the deferred maintenance. I'll give you another example. I had an appraiser go out, and the brick pointing was deteriorating. So, I guess, it was more than usual. It was like, maybe a good inch in. Well, guess what? The appraiser took a picture and looked at it and said, hey, you need to find out what the underlying cause of the deterioration of the cement in between the bricks. There could be an ongoing issue, because that's not normal. You could see a house that's a property that's 100 years old, 150 years old, and you don't see the deterioration, with, the mortar in between the bricks. So they called for it, and the agent was up in arms saying, why are they asking for this? This is crazy, whatever. 3.6, it's the new appraisal. Appraisers are looking at deferred maintenance, and they're looking at there's so much more scrutiny, on the property. So a lot of people aren't talking about it. I know in the mortgage world, we're talking about it. And we have all sorts of webinars, but I know on the real estate side, you realtors are going to be caught 100% totally blindsided, because every time I bring up this subject, nobody has ever heard of this at all. It's just not being talked about, period. So, hey, this is happening, and really, once we start getting into September, October, that momentum is really going to be there, and pretty much all these appraisals are going to be, switched over to the new version. And hey, the fun will begin at that point. It'd be really curious how everything pans out. And the biggest thing is that I'm still waiting for the answer is, hey, what happens if the appraiser cites that the house has been upgraded and there's no permits? Right now, that could potentially be a giant issue. Well, that's the Real Estate Show. Hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. And of course, this will be airing on YouTube, The Real Estate Show with Pat Lopez. Remember, we talk everything real estate, no limits. Hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next week.